Do you know anyone who bought a pre-construction 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and they bought it for a lot more than it's worth right now? And maybe they bought multiple. Maybe they're in a position where they're thinking about defaulting because there are people who are in this position thinking about defaulting right now. If so, stay tuned, watch this video, share with them because that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm Bawanka with the Compass team.
And it's Safraz with the Compass team.
And this is not about fear mongering. This is not about scaring people. This is just the truth of what's happening in the market today when it comes to pre-constructions, when it comes to them being defaulted and people not being able to close, because there are people out there who are not able to close and even not able to assign. Now, if you've been following our page for a while, you might have already seen our video there where we talk about assignments and what you're able to do with assignments. But sometimes people are not able to assign, and sometimes they feel like it would just be better to not even move forward with this and to lose your deposit when it comes to instead of assigning. But what we want to tell you is kind of how things look if you do end up deciding to default. So on our other episode where we talked about assigning and we had some different examples throughout, there's people out there who say, hey, listen, I've already put down 150,000, but my property has dropped $200,000 in value. Why don't I just default on it? Why would I try to assign it and have to pay maybe another 60 to $100,000 on it to even be able to sign? Like, I want to cut my losses. I want to get out of this. Why wouldn't someone just default instead of trying to move forward with that assignment?
Yeah. It's a great question, man. In the past, it was a lot different. But now, as the market has, year over year, especially we're looking at the condo market, but even in the freehold comparatively to when they bought 4 5 years ago, as the prices have come down, what we're seeing is there's huge lawsuits. I am talking, this is crazy, but this is also someone who bought 5 units. They were getting sued for close to $1 million by one builder. Of course, they over leveraged and bought 5 units, but just the regular person who bought 1 unit, the the problem with defaulting is the builder is going to sue you. And a lot of people are not familiar with how these lawsuits work. And we get a lot of clients who have these questions. So I've reached out to many lawyers. You've talked to a lot of people about it. What truly happens? Do you just lose your deposit or walk away? Which is fine. A lot of people will take that option. And in the past, let's say, we're talking 2019, 2020, the builder was okay with that, right? Why? Because, hey, they're like, hey, you know what? I sold this to you for 800,000, but it's worth $1 million. You walk away. We're all good. We'll sign that mutual agreement to walk away, and they'll walk away. But now, right?
Different times.
It's substantially different. We're talking, examples as someone who bought a property, let's say, for 1.5 million dollars. Today's market, it's probably worth 1.2, as an example. Maybe they put down 100 to 200K. So they're still, if they close today, they're already negative, right? So let's say they're negative 100K in that specific example. And you're like, hey, you know what, builder, I'll even pay you the 100K. They're saying no. What's happening now is the builder saying, you know what? Let's say closing is on January 1st and you're unable to close. Cool. We're not going to sue you today. You'll get a letter in the mail. So you'll get a letter in the mail in 30 days saying, hey, you didn't close. We have an agreement, as we will eventually get to a lawsuit. They'll just give you that letter. They have to give you that letter saying there is an intent to sue, but nothing right now. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I get a couple of years, maybe a year or two. I've talked to some lawyers that said it could be up to 7 years.
Okay, now in this time up to 7 years, what's happening with the property?
So the property, typically what the builder has been doing is you default, and they're supposed to do their best to get that property on the market. So on realtor.ca, the builder is supposed to, in a timely fashion. Legally, it's a timely fashion. What that means legally is also open to interpretation, right? Because sometimes you talk to builders and they're like, hey, we haven't been able to sell our own units. They actually go in order of their units, and then they'll get to the defaulting unit.
And that's the thing, right? As well, is like a lot of times when before a builder starts building, they need to be 70% sold. So during the time from when they started building to when it is right now, but maybe close to occupancy, maybe they still have, multiple units that are still available. So it's more important for them to sell their units than to be selling the defaulted unit that they've already sold already.
Exactly. Because, simply put, even in this scenario, right, the example of the 1.5 million, maybe the builder's like, hey, we're still selling units for 1.3, 1.4. If I list your unit for 1.2, whoever's defaulting, now I have to list all my units for that price or below. So the builder also, they play it strategically, right? Naturally, they want to take advantage. So they want to make sure that they get the advantage. Sorry, not take advantage, which they also do sometimes, but they want to take advantage of the situation so they're not incurring. Let's say they have 100 units left. Now they're like, hey, I had to sell this unit for much below market value. Now I have to sell all my units much below market value. So what happened is you get a letter. It's like, all right, you're defaulted. You bought this for this. You gave us the deposit. Fantastic, but we're gonna try to sell your unit, and that could take, typically they have to try their best. Could be between 1 to 2 years of when they list it. And when they list it, they have to sell it, and the new buyer has to take possession. Now the new buyer takes possession. Great. Now that's when they're gonna send the original buyer of that unit the lawsuit. Why? Because now they've officially realized the loss. Meaning that previous loss was just between the buyer and the builder. But now it's between the buyer and the builder, but the builder has real numbers. Like, hey, I actually sold your unit for this. These were my costs. You said you were gonna buy for 1.5 million. I need my money back.
Yeah. And they're gonna tack on to it too, like the costs of they have to close out. So really, they have to sell it for you. There's gonna be costs involved in all of these, and they get to choose what these costs are.
Yeah. So I've been looking at a lot of lawsuits, like unnecessarily maybe, but a lot of lawsuits because it's happening a lot. So I need to know kind of what's going on. What I've seen is they will tack on holding costs. So they're basically saying if you were to close on January 1st and we sold it 2 years later, from that date, they're charging you property taxes, utility bills. They're still charging utility bills, even though no one has lived there. They're charging you interest rate on your original purchase price. And when we look at interest rates today, you can get maybe 4%. But we're end users, right? That's what we get. But builders don't get 4%. Typically, they're getting 7 to 10, maybe 11%. And then they're like, hey, I paid 11. You're going to have to pay more. I was looking at one yesterday night, actually, 20% for your interest, right? So, if they sold it for, let's say, 100K less, and you're like, okay, I can pay the 100K in 2 years. Sounds very reasonable. But that 100K with, they charge real estate commission on top of that. They charge all these fees. So in that example that I saw yesterday, it was about 100K. They got sued 2 years later to 230K. 20% interest, and the builder's story. I saw just pages and pages of fees. So instead of it being 100K, your default, your lawsuit is 230, and the chance of you winning that, you know, unless you have very good lawyers that cost lots of money, it's not really happening. So it's 230K. But the problem that becomes then you get into more problem because you're like, hey, you know what? I don't have 230K. Screw it, I'm not gonna pay it. Like in America, people get sued for 300 million. I was like, I'm just not gonna pay it. But it's a lot different here.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk to somebody let's go with example. Somebody, they bought for 1.25 million. That was their purchase price. Now, if they assign, maybe they can assign for, let's say, 900,000, and they've already put down 200,000. Okay. So 1,250,000 purchase price, and they bought it 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and they put down 200,000 over time, and you still have your closing costs and whatnot. But now, like best case scenario, you're gonna be able to sell it for 900, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
What are you gonna recommend to somebody who's in this position?
It's really tough because based on those numbers, they're probably in a negative of like another 150K. So, you know, if you say, they're negative under 50K in the default, my problem with that as, working professional, I'm like, I want to make sure my credit is good. I have other properties. It's that if you allow that to default, that 150, 200K will easily become 350 to 400. And now you doubled your problem, right? So a lot of builders are actually working now with big banks. So, we've talked to TD, CIBC, RBC, Scotiabank, and they do something called a blanket mortgage, right? Another issue is, a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, your property," even the banks, right? The banks want to mitigate their risk and say, "You know what? Your property that you bought for 1.25 million is only worth 900. Now we're going to run the numbers on that." And then you're like, you really can't close because now you have to come up with another 200 grand to close on it. So the banks have made it simple. They're doing blanket mortgages.
Okay, so it's the blanket mortgage.
So blanket mortgages, yes, you have your appraisal value, which they'll do as well, but they say, you know what? Because we work with whatever, Tridel, Aspen Ridge, all these builders, will actually give you the mortgage based on your original purchase price, right? So if you did buy it for 1.25, they'll say, you know what, the 200K you put down, it's less than 20%, so maybe 15%, but with 15%, if you're gonna live there, you can close on it. They'll say, you know what, we will honor that, and you could actually close on it. The reason why a lot of people have been having no choice but to take that is so that they can actually just close on it. Maybe wait it out a couple of years, maybe move in it for a bit, rent out some portions, basically covering their losses, really, because the property value is down so much. But a lot of the banks are doing it for, actually, I would say like 90% of projects. It doesn't have to be big builders, even the medium-sized builders have been getting it. Again, you think it's, you know what? If I'm gonna lose 200, I might as well just get default. It's basically you're digging yourself into a hole, and eventually it will catch up to you.
Yeah, it's not a place that you want to be. And we've done videos on the condo market, on pre-construction, on how things even got to this place. You can always go back and watch that. But again, this one is just talking about defaulting and what things like that look like. But what's your last piece of advice for somebody who's, they have that thought in their head, maybe I should default?
Yeah, I would say, naturally, it's a tough decision. It's always case by case. Speak to a realtor who's dealt with clients who have had that experience, but also a lawyer. Like, the lawyers, like, thank God, knock on wood, we haven't had to deal with it. But the lawyers, when I'm speaking, they're like, yeah, it's happening a couple times a week at least. And they have experience. Sometimes, if you're, knock on wood, very lucky, they can get you out of the deal. Very slim chance. They must say, less than one.
Pretty sure that the lawyer that you're talking to is one that specializes in pre-construction. Is black, not just any lawyer, not resident, even just not just a real estate lawyer, one that specializes in pre-construction. And we have lawyers that specialize in pre-construction. So you can always reach out to us, click the link below, set up a time to talk, and we can put you in contact with the real estate lawyer.
Exactly. So, the real estate lawyer will tell you, hey, you know what? Over the last 30 days, I've been able to accomplish this for my folks. Then it gives you some confidence, right? If you're going to a real estate lawyer and they're like, actually, I've never dealt with this issue, but I'll deal with it for you. It's not worth the time or effort just because time is of the essence, right? If you're closing 60 days, 90 days, whatever your closing time is, you want to have everything lined up. At the end of the day, it's just basically mitigating your losses and reducing the amount of loss that you have. So real estate lawyer is number one. And if you, like Wonka said, reach out to us. Really, we can look at some of the contracts, but I would say go to the real estate lawyer, and we can explain it to them. We can all have a sit down, kind of go through that process with them. But real estate lawyer will be your number one asset to say, hey, this is how we're going to cover costs. This is the steps we'll get to, right? The real estate lawyer will talk to their lawyer, but lawyer right now is number one.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, if you know somebody who's thinking about it, maybe you're thinking about it, share this video with them. Of course, reach out to somebody. We're here to help, but you don't want to be in this problem alone. You want somebody who knows what they're doing, who's done it before, who has experience. So yes, always reach out to us or to another professional that you know. If there's any other topics, anything along these lines that you want to know, leave a comment below and we'll try to touch on that subject as well. I'm Bawanka with the Compass team.
And it's Safraz with the Compass team.
And we'll see you guys on the next one.